Okay, what's up? Quick weather report. It's blazing hot out. I was out already, and that's it. I'm in for the day. Maybe I'll sneak out tonight at some point, but it's Friday. You got to try and get out. Hope everybody's doing good. Looking forward to the weekend. You might see me over the weekend, maybe Sunday or something, because I think it's supposed to be hot all the way until then. Anyway, I said I wasn't going to be a hip-hop channel. I'm not going to be a hip-hop channel. I'm not. Look in this picture right over here. I found this the other day. If you look up there, that's my old MPC 2000 that I kind of regret getting rid of. I got rid of it several years ago. I kind of miss that. I mean, I have the pads on this thing. This controller, it's an Akai, and you get what you get out of it, but you don't get the clock and all that. You don't get the tactile feel of the MPC. So I got a bunch of stuff I can go over, see if I can crank through it while my microphone still works. Somebody asked me to turn off the face tracking on my little camera gadget, but I can't figure out how to turn it off yet. And if it's bothering you guys, put it in the comments that I should turn it off or whatever. I mean, as long as I don't move around too much, right? It doesn't go too crazy. Anyway, speaking on that, the MPC thing, we'll get, a little bit of that. The 16 levels was maybe a lot more important than some people know or realize. A lot of guys really took advantage of that when doing their hi-hats and doing some of the sample stutters and things like that. That was done with, a lot of times with 16 levels. It wasn't done with just one pad and a feel kind of thing with velocity. They would set up the 16 levels for that sample and find the pocket that way. I can transition a little bit. I'm going to do some on the comments, or because there's a ton of them. And by the way, I don't mind the trolls or the negative comments. Like I've said in my response, I mean, I'm oblivious to that stuff. I mean, if you know me long enough or know me at all, that's not going to bother me. What do I have to gain from giving you guys info? I mean, or loot. What do I have to gain from giving you wrong info or things that I haven't really sourced out myself over the years? And that is something that came up in a conversation I had yesterday, of which there were many for some reason. These conversations are very similar to back in the day, like when I would be working and I had an assistant engineer, which was every session. You had an assistant or two sometimes. But, you're grinding away, you're doing a 15, 16 hour, 18 hour day or whatever, and that person is in the room with you a lot. And that was at the time when sessions were a lot different, obviously, than they are now, in that there were a lot of rules. When I was coming up in the game, there were a lot of rules. Like the assistant engineer basically does not speak unless spoken to. Hey, I need something. And that person would jump off the couch or jump off a chair from some corner. And they were just sitting there literally in the room waiting for something to do. So to kind of clearly define that, there was no such thing as someone having an iPhone or a phone in their hand or an iPad while they were assisting you. They were doing literally nothing else except being tuned into what the engineer needed or what the client needed. Hey, she needs a pencil out there in the vocal booth. Run one into the room. They weren't even allowed to leave the room or come. If they had left the room to go get something, it was inappropriate for them to come into the room while music was playing. They had to wait till the sound stopped, creak the door open a little bit and be like, "Can I," and then come in, because everything was about the focus of what people were working on, and that's some of the isolation thing. I think is a big deal. That the screens, the constant visuals, and I get it that there's no other way to work now. I mean, think about these old school sessions. We were on tape. There was not one screen in the room except for the automation screen for the SSL or the Neve. And that had nothing going on. That was like you were just typing in commands on that. So there was no visual taking your mind off of the audio, off of the music. So everyone in the room was listening over and over and over again without any distraction. Whether that has something to do with anything being better or not, I don't know. But it is part of the equation. So I thought I'd throw it out there. The other thing is that our sessions, and I think this is good advice for today, no matter what, especially for today, because of how much is left at your control as far as, making your tracks, making production, making a mix or whatever. Our sessions had a destination. So what I mean by that, and I've stolen that word from someone else, there was an end. And typically it was even that night or 5 o'clock in the morning when we were finishing the mix. So in other words, the day might start at like noon in some cases. Let's just say like a guy like Stevie J, who I worked with a ton. We would typically start at noon on something that was going to be like a full day thing. I'd be there at 11 with the assistant, making sure everything was kind of up and running, make sure all the gear was plugged in correctly, where it was going to be on the console. Because this was literally like, it was going down then. It was not like maybe. So everything had to work and you had to be ready. So then producer would come in this case Stevie, and we would know, let's just say, I'm not even going to use a name, but just say some R&B singer is coming in that's doing a track with Stevie. There is no track yet. He has not sent them a track. He's not even had a conversation with them. If anything, his manager talked to the A&R and booked him to make a track with said singer. So he'll come in and be like, hey, you know what? He would start loading up sounds or whatever and playing keyboards and doing this and that. And then a couple of his guys would be hanging around. They'd be bouncing some ideas. But he would be at that point, as like a lot of producers, I'm not just speaking about him, so I'm just giving you like a one example thing. He would be vibing out, trying to figure out, find something that inspired him. Maybe he had a little something in his mind from the night before or a different day, or maybe he had a little part of a beat hanging around on his zip drive that he loaded into the MP and then started messing with that and saying like, I think this is going to be the one for so-and-so. So he would start embellishing and enhancing that idea, that beat. And whether, he was very well versed on the keyboard and stuff like that. So he'd be playing keys and layering this and layering that. All this time is basically him at the MPC cranking. And, we would basically just be hanging around in the room. I mean, myself, I'd be just hanging out in the room in case he needed something. You want to hear something more at the desk or whatever? Cool. Oh yeah, I'll turn that up. Oh yeah. Can you have the assistant hook up a bass? Yes. Okay, let's get a bass. Let's rent a bass. Let's get one in here. So then at some point, somewhere probably mid-afternoon, maybe 3, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. Okay, here comes the singer. with her little entourage. And usually. And then usually what would go down would be the producer would vibe out with the singer, maybe go in the live room, play the piano, say hello. They don't know each other at all. Okay. And these are major stars. I'm talking about like big stars. And then everybody would come back in the control room, and he would then present what he thinks they should work on. And I would say 90% of the time there was no issue. There was a lot of clout maybe that the producer had at that time. So the artist was like, okay, I'm going to follow your lead, and this is, all right, let's do it. And so most of the time that artist, maybe with someone else, would start vibing to the track and writing. This is on an R&B tip. If you could say it was the same for a rap track, whereas like, you know, when the artist showed up, he might start writing bars, you know, right away to this thing. And this interaction would go on for the next several hours, you know, more hours than I care to even remember at this point, or like count. And at some point it would be like, okay, Tone, let's lay this beat. So that meant, you know, lay it to tape. So track the whole thing to tape. And then from tape, with the tape going, then it was, we've got some vocals. Let's lay this hook. Singer would go in there, you start laying the hook, stacking vocals. Maybe you had to add a second tape for 48 track so that you had enough for background vocals. I had a couple of different ways of doing background vocals back then with flying things from different things. That's a whole other conversation. Get a lead vocal, get ad-libs. Now you're talking, you know, it might be midnight by now. And now the singer's done. And the producer would typically be like, let's, do you want to mix it now? Or do you want to come back tomorrow and mix? And I would say more than 50% of the time, I would say like, okay, let's come back tomorrow and mix it. I'll mix it. So that would mean I would come in at 10 or 11 in the morning, start mixing. Producer would pop in somewhere around 6. We'd vibe out go over a couple of things. And that's when, also, depending on what was going on, that's when the drops would happen. Now there's different ways that the drops went about happening. Some producers, believe it or not, didn't do the drops. It was the engineer with maybe the A&R guy. A lot of times we would do the drops as engineers and mixers after we had a pretty good rapport with the producer we were working with. We would do the drops on the console with automation. So, you know, there were nothing visual. And, you know, it's a lot easier today. If you want to create an arrangement with drops, then you can just mute sections and bars and very cleanly. It was hard. It was a tricky game to get things clean back then, but you did it until it was clean. So the drop thing could either be done by myself, and then there would be some tweaks like, okay, I did a whole bunch of drops, and the producer comes in and says like, get rid of that one, make that one happen sooner, and okay, that's cool. And turn down the hi-hat, maybe make that snare knock a little bit more. I'm not sure if I'm feeling the bass enough. Okay, let me do a little something. Maybe an hour or two later, they'd come back in the room. Okay, did you do all your rides on the vocals? Yes. Yeah, I did them all. So that's why the vocal's sitting in the pocket. All right, let's print it. And that's it. So there was this commitment that was going on, which I think is from guys that have come to me for advice, a lot of times the commitment is not there to say like, I am going to finish this today, or I'm going to finish this by, you know, I'm finishing these 5 songs by the end of June or July 1st, and they're going on Spotify, and they're done. With the open-ended thing of the production room, where the clock technically is not. I mean, the clock's always ticking, whether it's your time that you're getting quote unquote paid for, or it's just your time disappearing. So the clock is always ticking. I think I covered enough for now. I'm not sure. Yeah. The other thing you can go on to real quick was in this discussion from yesterday, and this was a guy that I've learned a lot of stuff from. I was talking to him about the idea that like, it's scary to me in some way. Like when we were getting our information coming up, there were only a couple of sources. There was like, you didn't get much from Mix Magazine, but it was sort of like, made you feel like, oh wow, this is what equipment is being used and what's out and available, and you'd get excited. So there was Mix Magazine, there was a couple other little things here and there. There was no internet. So where did it come from? Everything was literally face to face in a room with somebody. So if your friend was mixing down the street or down the hall, in the case of like a Hit Factory, you know, you might pop in and be like, you know, and when you popped in, they might ask you like, I'm having trouble with this vocal. Like, what do you think I should do? Oh, well, and you think to your thing of like, well, when I was having trouble with a vocal and I asked so-and-so what to do, they gave me these things. And, you know, the telephone situation of like, you know, information being passed down is very real. But that information was kind of, it was vetted because it was coming from people who were doing it. And I don't know who all these people are on the internet. Like, you know, it doesn't matter to me. I'm just saying in the case of someone who is watching something like this and trying to get something out of it, I would say take almost everything in some ways with a grain of salt, and also be a little cynical about information coming your way from someone who's got particularly a lot of production in their videos. The ones I've seen that have like tons of production, I mean, part of me is laughing because like, oh my God, this guy is ridiculous. And then 2, part of me is going, oh my God, he's got, you know, 800,000 views, and that's, God only knows how many people are out there that are putting 6 EQs on a vocal and then messing with and then putting something from Sound Toys on the vocal, and then 8 compressors on the vocal. I've seen it in person. I've had guys call me into their room and say like, what do you think is going on with this vocal? And they look and there's 6 redundant plugins on it. Tricky stuff. Have a good weekend. Thanks for the likes and subscribes and all that. And thanks for some people have bought me a coffee. Some people have PayPal'd me and all that. I mean, it's much appreciated. It's cool. I'll keep at it while the weather permitting.